Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks and a happy 2016 to all of you. It's a brand new year, time for some fresh changes, right? Well, I guess that's the case in this video because I'm playing on a different account. I'm playing on the North American server right now in an account that is very old. I haven't played really since 2012. This account I just used to be able to play with some of my friends and some of my followers back then. Something that doesn't really happen so much now because there are so many of you lovely ladies and gentlemen out there that it's hard to find the time to engage at least as much as I used to 3 years ago. However, what's the point? You might be saying, why have you got to Cromwell Berlin on this account? Well, when there were the sales over the Christmas period, I decided to pick myself up a Cromwell Berlin and a Rudy because I'm very interested to see how the meta is on the North American server, and it's something that I also want to do on the Russian server as well. Lots of people say, oh, North America is easier, North America is harder, Russia is harder, Russia is easier. People play differently, they use different tanks, and so this is something that I eventually want to start to have a little exploration into, at least in 2016. So I bought these two tanks, prepare. I want to get to roughly about tier 7, maybe just play the Comet on both of those servers and see if I notice that people play more aggressively, as an example, or maybe they use more tank destroyers, maybe there's more artillery players on certain servers. It's something that I definitely want to look into, and I thought that you guys might be interested in. And so this is sort of the start of my progress into cross-realming, or cross-region play, I guess, in the Cromwell Berlin. And what better tank to really start it in, playing in a British premium tank on the American server. I'm only joking. But the Cromwell Berlin is something that a lot of people picked up over the holiday period. And really, it's not any better or worse than the standard Cromwell. It plays in a very similar fashion. The key differences between the vehicle is that at least when you look at the raw stats, the ground resistances of this tank are much better than the standard Cromwell. But the traverse speed appears to be better on the Cromwell Berlin, but when you actually align two of these tanks up and do a bit of a traverse race, if you will, the actual standard Cromwell does better, and that must be something to do with upgraded tracks and also an upgraded engine not getting factored into that initial, not getting factored into the raw traverse speed that you see. My feeling is that the Cromwell Berlin has slightly worse gun handling than the standard Cromwell, especially on the turret traverse, it feels like for me. But the tank does have those better ground resistances, which makes its acceleration, especially off-road, much better than the standard Cromwell. So you get pluses and minuses. This tank is 99% identical. I'd say, for example, with the recent release of the Ripper pattern, that tank is maybe kind of 90 to 95% of a Pershing. But at least with the Cromwell Berlin, if you are a Cromwell driver, you could just play it almost in exactly the same fashion. You're going to get 99% the same kind of result from the vehicle. And talking about situations and also pressure, this game has been quite nice for the Cromwell Berlin so far. We managed to flank our opponents, and we used some cover to conceal ourselves. And remember, I'm playing with a fresh crew on this tank at the moment. I don't have such luxuries as Sixth Sense, improved abilities such as the thing that improves when I turn the turret. What's that called? Snapshot. And I have to get in and try and save the team right now. They're going to win. For some reason, one of them decided to leave the cap circle. I guess he's a bit greedy and he wants to kill some more tanks. So thanks for that, enemy team. Really appreciate it. I get hit by the IS-2 as I try and make my way to the cap circle. They reset once, maybe they're not going to reset twice. I put my gunner back in after I lose my gunner to the Rudy. I'm just getting into position now to try and interrupt. 5 seconds left. Oh, I miss! Put the shell in to interrupt the cap circle a little bit, however, there. But I think it was actually that Skoda T-40 on the enemy team that got the initial interrupt off. And this game is neck and neck right now. The enemies are surrounded, though. I want to get out of that situation as quickly as possible. All it takes is the T-150 or the Rudy to reverse around the corner and to shoot me, and it looks like he was trying to do exactly that. So I managed to evade the T-150, and I found myself an Su-100. This is a lovely situation for this tank, and this is exactly where you want to be in your fast medium vehicles against tank destroyers. On their flank, lapping them up. 3 quick shots into him, secures 394 damage done, my 3rd kill, and over 2,000 damage now, which is a great result for any tier 6 tank. But the game is not over. Now I'm going to try, this is very important what I'm doing here, I'm trying to keep my opponents at a range where I feel like they're not going to spot me. I do have a camouflage crew on this tank. That's the first skill that I recommend you take on a vehicle of this. And I don't think that they're going to spot me until I get over this ridge line now. But hopefully I'm going to spot them. We've got 8 seconds left. A little bit of a reset there. I make my way forwards. Maybe I'm being a little bit too passive with my defending of the cap circle here, but I am on very low health. I could shoot that Rudy, but I decide to shoot the VK instead. Now I go to finish off the Rudy. We take him down. Hopefully we can put one into the back of the T-150. Yes, and this is just glorious at the end of the game. We put another shot into the VK-3601. My artillery interrupts him some further, taking his life points down, and he gets removed by the Nashorn on my team. So there were some key things that I did there. Basically tried to, when I fell back, that was to avoid the T-150. Then we finished our 1 versus 1 against the SU-100. And then I made my way around here to avoid getting spotted again, where we could get ourselves into position to interrupt the cap circle. You'll notice that I had to make a bit of a hero run across this position behind these buildings. And that's because at that point, the enemies were going to cap within about 10 seconds or so. And there's no point in being alive at the end of the game. If the enemies cap your base, you've lost and you might as well be dead. You can't take your tank with you. And it was just a blind hope, really, that I might be able to sneak my way through here and get a shot into the tanks that were capping out. Luckily, my last-ditch attempt at this risky play paid off, and we were able to get into position above our opponents, sneak a shot in, and then escape out before that sneaky T-150 was going to finish me off. Then it was about staying out of the vision range of my opponents. By using my mod pack, I know where 445 meters is, which is the maximum spotting distance of my opponents, but I don't need to go exactly outside that, especially at these kind of low tiers where my opponents are likely to only have about 350 to at most 400 meters view range, which will get counted out by things such as my camouflage skill on my crew. Traveling up here was not only to avoid getting killed by the T-150 and to engage the SU-100, but it was also about changing the angle of engagement. And that's something that you should always try and do. By venturing up here, we get the sides of our opponent's turrets, and we maybe indeed force them to turn their turrets towards us, which will allow all of our allies to be able to get shots into the side of their turrets. And when you're in a super fast tank like the Cromwell Berlin, you really do have absolutely no excuse to relocating, to changing the angle of the engagement, and having a massive impact for your team in doing so. So let's get stuck into some more Tier 6 premium gameplay, this time in the Rudy. So now I'm playing in the Rudy again on my North American account, and so what's the difference between the Rudy and the Cromwell, you might be asking? Well, they're 2 Tier 6 premium tanks that I like. I really enjoy playing Tier 6 tanks occasionally. Sometimes when you're in a matchup like this, I feel like the competition isn't quite as much as the tiers that I prefer. Ideally, Tier 8, 9, and then 10 and 7 as well are both very interesting for me. But I really feel like the sweet spot for me is at Tier 9. So what's the difference between the Rudy and the Cromwell Berlin? Well, the mobility on the Rudy is massively worse than the Cromwell Berlin. But what are the benefits? Well, the benefits are a much better turret, smaller front face. Fair enough, you do have this cupola, but the armor on the front of the turret is better. The gun is different. The gun is an 85mm rather than the 75mm that you get on the Cromwell. And so that means that you don't actually have to hit your opponents quite as much, because your rate of fire less and your alpha damage is much higher. I believe the alpha damage is 180 rather than, I think, the Cromwell has, is it 140 or 135? I can't quite remember off my head. However, the Cromwell's rate of fire is so much better than the Rudy's, and its DPM is actually better as well, even though the alpha damage is less. But I have to admit, I just feel so much more comfortable sniping with the gun of the Rudy at these kind of ranges than I do with the Cromwell Berlin, especially when I have to move, and that's because the gun handling is much better. The aim time's better, dispersions are better. This is just a much better sniper tank. And this vehicle, again, is very, very, very similar to the T-34-85, a lot like the Cromwell Berlin is to the Cromwell. And so if you like this kind of gameplay, then I definitely recommend picking up a T-34-85 if you can't get your hands on the Rudy. Again, I'm playing with a fresh crew. I think they start at 100%, but I don't have the luxuries such as Sixth Sense and having other useful skills, especially for sniping at long range. But we are putting in some good shots here. Unfortunately, at long range, when your enemies do go backwards and forwards, it does mean that you do miss a couple of shots. Hopefully we can put one to the side of this T-150 turret. He gets taken out, but we manage to shut this Rudy down by hitting him in the back. Maybe we can hit him again. Yes, great stuff. 195 damage, 171 damage. Just feels right on this tank. Maybe we can hit this Matilda as well. Oh gosh, 220, that was a high roll. Remember, the average on this gun is 180, but we two-shot that guy, that poor fellow. But I guess he is a tier 4 medium tank versus a tier 6. That's not really very fair. So the position that you saw me use at the beginning of the game, or just quickly, this is about knowing where you've got sneaky opportunities. That Crusader probably didn't know about that archway, and we certainly did. So that allows us to finish him off, and that means that he'll stop proxy spotting us, which hopefully means that we can start to get some shots in at these fellows. So at the start of this game, you saw me sniping up at the top of the hill. This is something very, very, very important, a meta that if you don't know about on Himmelsdorf, that you really should pay attention to this. Basically, on Himmelsdorf, anyone who goes what I call around the west of Castle von Himmelsdorf, i.e. around here, is putting themselves massively open to any players that like to situate themselves here, or alternatively, on the other side over here. You're just like, it's like a turkey shoot, really. If you've got a good camo rating, or especially at low tiers when you can more or less rely on your opponents not having very good view range, they have no chance of spotting you back. And even with, even at tier 10, when I'm using some more of my sneaky tanks, maybe like a charioteer, and I've got a camo net up and binoculars activated, then I'm going to be able to easily spot my opponents without getting shot at. So this Churchill wants to come forwards. We put in a good shot on the move. We were loading a high explosive round there because I believe I wanted to finish off this T-150 who's on 4 health. And again, we're just using the knowledge of the map. I reload another high explosive shell because I know this T-150 is on 4 health, and we get to pretty much splash our shell anywhere on his tank to finish him off. Now that he's dead, I think I'm just going to reload an AP shell, as we can see at the bottom, because, and ironically, the Churchill went to low health, and it would have been better for us to fire a high explosive round at him there. But a fairly straightforward game here for the Rudy, just using the great 85mm gun this tank gets out. I guess out experiencing our opponents, well, knowing more than they do, I guess, with the meta on Himmelsdorf. They went round the west, we punished them. At the end of the game, we're just trying to hunt down this A43, who is also a very good player as well. Fortunately for us, he's firing APCR rounds and he's managing to penetrate every single shot. Luckily, he bounces that one, and my allies managed to take him down, but curses! Just missed out on a top gun again this game. And so this time, a decent round for the Tier 6 Soviet Premium Medium Tank. This vehicle is a lot of fun. I do like the novelty of the 4-tank bin and a dog. And when you get Sixth Sense, hearing Sharik barking is also a good amount of fun as well. One of the key things that I wanted to draw from this replay is how you can completely obliterate your opponents on a Castle von Himmelsdorf. Basically, if you see that nobody on your team is either going to go down here, you spawn towards the north, or alternatively over here, if you spawn towards the south, I thoroughly recommend you go there. If you've got any kind of an accurate tank, such as, for example, an M103 has a nice 120mm that would be suited to that location, a Borsig will do exceedingly well there. Anything that you feel will be competitive at long ranges, you might not want to take, for example, the T-49 there, or an IS, or anything that's too derpy. But frankly, by holding that position, you can just dominate the hill, and this totally prevents either side from being aggressive. And if you do decide to go to the west of Castle von Himmelsdorf, you better do so aggressively. Try and get yourself into a position such as this. That means you're going to be safe from down below. Alternatively, if you spawn towards the south, then you're best to try and get yourself into this location, and then it's likely that they're only going to have a much smaller shot at the side of your turret from these kind of locations, and not this position here. Try not to get caught out. This is one of the big differences that I see between a team that has maybe 40% chance to win, or a team that has, say, 60+% chance to win. So let's just take a very quick look at the post-game stats for both of these rounds. So our Cromwell Berlin game was an ace tanker. We also got a high caliber and a scout medal for that early detection work that we did. And boy, what a high caliber it was as well. 2,700 damage nearly. That's nearly an extra half what the rest of my team were able to do. With 1,583 base experience, one of the reasons why I love the Cromwell Berlin, even though we resupplied those consumables that we used, we still made 50,000 credits profit and got a gigantic chunk of premium experience that will go towards training a crew that I eventually want to move into the Comet. I certainly didn't play this game flawlessly. I missed a few opportunities that could have meant that we lost the game with regards to defending the cap circle, but it was still a decent round in a very fun tank. Next up, in the Rudy, we also got an ace tanker. This time it was 4,238 experience for our double. We got a high caliber again for the 3,212 damage that we did. We got much less experience. This was 1,413. It's quite likely that I wasn't spotting for myself up on the hill. And remember, when you're not spotting for yourself, you're only getting half of the experience that you otherwise would for the damage that you deal. Nevertheless, just like the Cromwell, a nice, profitable game. 65,000 credits profit. Lovely. And a good chunk of premium experience. Low-tier premium tanks really do give you that extra bit towards your crew training. And hopefully these guys might go into something like a T-34 and Object 140 eventually when I want to try out some Tier 10 games. And so I guess your next question might be, well, what do you think of the North American server? Well, it's far too early for me to make big judgments about how the meta is compared to the European server, especially considering I've only been playing at Tier 6. I think when I go up to Tier 7, try and play some Tier 8 games as well, that'll give me a much better idea of the metas and the standard of players. Also, the time of the year that I've been playing, over Christmas and this New Year period, there are some very, very new players on. Even on the European server, I've been noticing that there have been more new players or people returning to World of Tanks who are maybe inexperienced than there has been probably since last Christmas. So it's not a really fair judgment to make this early on. But it's certainly something that I want to keep going for. I'm going to keep playing the occasional game during my live stream on the North American server, and then maybe I can eventually get an idea between them. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And if these replays have sparked your interest in these Tier 6 premium medium tanks, then simply click through up here or use that more info icon in the top right hand corner of your screen to see full reviews of each of these vehicles. And if you're a player who has experience of playing multiple regions, what do you think about the metas on each of the servers? Do you think that some servers are more aggressive? Do you think that some servers are more passive? Do you think that a specific server has more of a certain type of tank? Or maybe you think that that's all nonsense and they're all pretty much the same. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.